The following segment is a mock debate produced for educational purposes only. The views expressed during the episode represent neither the official opinions of the Institute of International Relations and its researchers, nor the debate participants.
Hello everybody, I am Klimis Katsiavrias and I welcome you all to Podcast.IA, the podcast of the Center for Russia, Eurasia and Southeastern Europe of the Institute of International Relations. Today, we have with us Stamatina Somaraki.
Hello, Clemens. Thank you once again for the invitation.
Thank you for being here. Theoni Griva.
Hello, Clemens. Hello, everybody. I'm very happy to be with you again.
Panagiota Chatzilymperi.
Hello, everyone. Nice to meet you here.
And last but not least, Pavlos Karagiannodimas.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for the invitation.
Thank you all for being here. Together with them, we will talk about LGBTQI+ rights in the European Union. More specifically, in today's debate, we are going to critically evaluate the landscape of LGBTQI+ rights within the European Union, with a particular emphasis on discerning whether a significant disparity between Eastern and Western Europe exists. Furthermore, we're aiming to delve into the political, societal, and historical factors that may have contributed to such a divergence. Before we start our debate, we would like to reiterate that today's discussion is a mock debate, produced for educational purposes. The views, which will be shared later, do not represent the official opinions of the Institute of International Relations and its researchers. Additionally, these views do not necessarily reflect the actual views of any of the debate participants. And with that over, let's go to round one. In this round, Team A will present their arguments first, followed by Team B. Each team has 3 minutes for their statement. The order of the teams has been decided by a coin toss. And with that, Stamatina Somaraki, the floor is yours. You may begin.
Thank you very much. Well, for most of its first half century, the European Union consisted almost entirely of countries from Western Europe. That changed in 2004 when the EU expanded to include some former Soviet bloc countries in Central and Eastern Europe, including Hungary, Poland, and Estonia. While the EU has integrated its new member states into its governing structures, there are some significant differences in public attitudes between its Western European countries and its Central and Eastern European countries, according to the surveys conducted between 2018 and 2023. Specifically, adults in the EU's Central and Eastern European states tend to be less likely than those in the EU countries of Western Europe to say they would welcome Muslims or Jews into their families or neighborhoods, and they're less likely to favor same-sex marriage. At the same time, the Central and Eastern Europeans are more likely than the Western Europeans to view Christianity as an important component of their national identity and to express higher levels of religious commitment. So the answer to the question of whether there is a divide between East and West is that in fact there is. Excellent example, Portugal and Poland. Portugal can be one of the most LGBTQ-friendly countries in the world. The LGBTQ movement in the country was sparked by the Carnation Revolution in 1974, which produced a number of major social, demographic, and economic changes. Due to a political environment that favors an equal ecosystem for all its citizens, same-sex adoptions, same-sex relationships, and marriage has been recognized and legalized in the country. On the other hand, Poland is a great example of a country where the power of the conservative Roman Catholic Church remains large. The church is deeply hostile to same-sex marriage, and in the ruling Law and Justice Party, it has a government in tune with its most regressive influences.
Thank you, Stamatina. Everything you said was very insightful. Now, Panagiota, Chatzilymperi, it's your turn.
Thank you very much. One general position is that this divide between West and East is not a real issue. At first, it may seem that there is an imaginary separation and a conservatism of Eastern Europe of gender issues. However, this is a hasty view because also in the West, there are organizations and groups that are against the rights of this community. And it can be said that they also have a strong impact in the public sphere. Unfortunately, the politicization of these issues does not allow societies to consider that they are human rights issues. When we talk about politicalization, it refers to the organization of political narratives around gender issues in order to give a political advantage in some candidates for political power and interest groups. In international politics, gender issues opened new horizons in international relations theory and methodology, where gender issues are high on the public agenda. The division between East and West is complex and multi-layered, as it depends on issues of political culture and the historical influence of past regimes. The countries of Eastern Europe are post-communist states, where the political culture of the Soviet Union was imposed. Centralization was a dominant norm, thus they were negatively predisposed to any identity that could serve as a means of differentiation. It has been pointed out that there were restrictions on freedom of expression over gender issues, especially for the LGBTQ community, and these countries had not experienced the corresponding social movements of the decades of 60s and 70s. So, the pluralism of the liberal political culture was established much later, and we still cannot say with certainty that liberalism works in the same way in East as in the West. But by now, the majority of Eastern European countries are full members of the European Union. So their interaction with Western actors is more intense, and we have to look at how the West now reacts on gender issues.
Panagiota, thank you for your intricate analysis. And with that, round one of the debate is over, and we can begin with round two. In this round, the order of the teams will be reversed. And thus, Pavlos, Karagiannodimas, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Now, I will continue adding to the argument that was presented by my friend and teammate. And if anything, in the past decade, the self-proclaimed progressive West has established laws, restrictions, and other measures that attack the LGBTQ community, especially when we consider the laws, the discriminatory laws, in fact, against the trans and queer communities. There are many examples we can pick and choose from, either from the fact that many Western countries have only recently allowed same-sex marriages, or from the constant attack on the LGBTQ community that happens in the United States of America, and more specifically, the state of Florida by Governor Ron DeSantis, who, during his time in office, has passed multiple discriminatory laws, one of them being the Don't Say Gay bill that prohibits talking about sexual orientation and gender identity to children until the 3rd grade in public schools. Since we have already established that the relationship and subsequent division between East and West is multi-layered and complex, we can't boil down the differences concerning the treatment of the LGBTQ community to one-word answers. The truth of the matter is, the East, thanks to the many restrictions posed under communist rule, will need a different approach in order to acclimate to the liberal democratic culture that the West has freely enjoyed for so long. Thanks to the institutions like the European Union, we're seeing how this divide is slowly, but surely, decreasing, starting from the bottom up with the development of NGOs aimed at the protection of the community in these countries, and thanks to European laws they have a net of safety that didn't exist in the past.
Thank you for enhancing our understanding of the subject, Pavlos. And Theoni, you may begin.
Thank you, Clemens. Well, let's face it. Around the world, people are under attack for who they are. Living as a lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, or intersex person can be a devastating effect physically, mentally, and emotionally for all those who are forced to endure it, but it can be also life-threatening. Something we can definitely see happening inside the European Union. While several governments, and especially in emerging Europe, have actively chosen to take real action in order to progress LGBTQ plus equality, there has been backsliding too in countries to the east of the continent. On May 17, during the International Day Against Homophobia, Transphobia and Biphobia, a new ranking took place showing again a clear geographical divide in how European countries are progressing when it comes to LGBTQ+ rights, such as marriage equality, adoption for gay couples, gender identity, gender recognition, and anti-hate crime measures. What are the results? For the eighth year, Malta is the champion state with a score of 89%. It is not a secret that the LGBTQ plus community has bloomed in there the last 5 or 6 years since the legislature is very active. Malta became the first country that banned conversion therapy, and people in this community can live openly, especially given how small and Catholic the islands are. After years of being stalled, there is also movement in Latvia, Lithuania, Serbia, Slovakia, and Slovenia, countering the narrative that there is an East-West divide on these rights in Europe, providing governments in these countries with strong opportunities to underpin democracy through adoption and implementation. On the other hand, there are countries like Poland, as Stamatina said very right before, being in the last place within the European Union. Poland is governed by nationalist conservatives, and the country meets just 15% of the criteria. The hate is all over the place, and when someone might come out there, they never know if they will be accepted. According to Polish law, parents are seen to have made a mistake when registering their child on the birth certificate, something that can only be corrected by court.
Thank you, Theoni. Round 2 has now ended. We have reached the last part of our debate. In round 3, each team has the opportunity to refute and respond to the other side's arguments. Theoni and Stamatina, you have 3 minutes.
As we can see that there are targeted attacks on the trans community, but we can see that there are countries where governments are starting to reform transgender laws, as in Germany now. Politicians have more understanding and they are more determined to keep reform processes on track. Spain, for example, made a leap forward in the ratings because it now has a comprehensive gender identity law based on self-disclosure by those affected. Moldova and Croatia have also improved their ILGA rankings year on year. But not much can be expected from the European Union as an institution, as it has no jurisdiction over family law. The responsibility lies with the member states, many of which are also blocking the possible expansion of the US discrimination directive, which so far only applies in the workplace. But if states have a political will, the EU could do more.
At this point, what I think needs to be said is that despite the important steps forward regarding the equality of LGBTQ plus people in the EU the last few years, LGBTQ plus people still report high levels of discrimination. Too many LGBTQ plus people continue to live in the shadows, afraid of being ridiculed, discriminated, or even abused. Even though some countries have advanced LGBTQ plus equality, surveys finding shows that overall there has been too little real progress, leaving many LGBTQ plus people vulnerable. Policymakers should take note and do more to actively promote full respect for rights of LGBTQ+ people. Everybody in the European Union should feel safe and free to be themselves.
Thank you both so much for your contributions. Now, the other team, Pavlos and Panagiota, please present your statement.
Thank you very much for giving us the floor. I will make a very short statement before passing the floor to my colleague, Panagiota. The treatment of the LGBTQ community in Western and Eastern countries, while still being a very important issue that affects the everyday life of hundreds of thousands and of individuals, and is one of utmost importance, is a drop in the ocean at a time when the rule of law is being challenged in European nations, at a time where far-right politicians rise to power, and at the time where the European Union is facing its biggest challenge yet, thanks to the rise of anti-EU sentiments in multiple countries. If we truly want to shorten the gap between the West and East in this and many other issues, we must first tackle the most important issue of all, which is how to protect democracy. And with that, I now pass the floor to my colleague, Panagiota.
Thank you very much, Pavlos. Also, it must be paid attention to the fact that sometimes the Western liberal narrative constructs a separation narrative between the two sides of Europe. This situation is needed to be avoided. The organization of two opposing and conflicting narratives could damage the unity of the European Union, which has been so much needed in recent years, because we need a strong European Union. Historically, the Western side of Europe has tried to construct a narrative superiority in various areas, not only on the issue we are discussing now, by constructing an image of the other that brings together all the negative characteristics. So, this situation it must be avoided, I say again, because there is an issue which concerns the human rights.
Thank you both so much for your wonderful points. And with that, round 3, and therefore our debate in general is over. We hope that our listeners have learned more about LGBTQI+ rights in the European Union. I want to thank you all for participating in this debate and for your amazing arguments. Stamatina, Somaraki.
Thank you very much one more time.
Thank you. Theoni, Griva.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure to be with all of you again, and bravo, Klimis, for the great host.
I appreciate that. Panagiota, Chatzilymperi.
Thank you very much for the very interesting discussion. I hope that we proceed this issue with respect to human rights and the personality of people.
I hope so as well. And finally, Pavlos Karagiannodimas.
Thank you once again for being one of the best hosts this podcast ever had. And I'm very glad that we finally had a discussion on such an important issue concerning the youth and the human rights stations in Europe. Thank you.
Agreed. I would like to thank you all for tuning in. You can find out more about the Center for Russia, Eurasia and Southeastern Europe in the description box. And finally, from the team of Podcast.IA, we sincerely wish you all a happy Pride Month. Have a great day, and hopefully you'll be tuning in for the next episode.